You are in for an interesting ride.
Hello and welcome to another Ammach Project Archives episode. This one harks back to the very inception of the Ammach Project, which stands for Anomalous Mind Management Adoptee Contactee Helpline. I think, as I mentioned in recent editions of various other material, Netflix also showed the documentary, what I call a mockumentary, of Confessions of an Alien Abductee, made by Channel 4, sadly, as a real bit of a hit piece on the whole thing. So anyway, shame on you, Channel 4, still shame on you. However, since that time, the Ammach Project and now the ETN phone has been getting a lot of, what do you call those people? Trolls or hoaxers or idiots, numpties, dicks, who have been ringing the line, take me to your leader and being probed. Anyway, it's so infantile. It is unbelievable. Still, I guess a lot of people since COVID don't have a lot of things else to do with their time. They're certainly not engaging their brains, but hey, never mind. So we're harking back in this episode to the point to the 13th of May 2011, which is the first convened meeting of the Ammach Project. And Dave Hodrian was there, and so was Dave Griffin from Exopolitics, Dave Hodrian of BUFA, which is the Birmingham UFO group. So with Miles Johnson recording. So this meeting was essentially just to set the tenet for what the Ammach Project was going to be, which was hopefully going to be a support group. And you will hear some really beautiful, really amazing testimonials here in this, just over an hour's worth of recording. And I have re-edited the original to make it relevant and tidy up the vocals for today and to include only those that are relevant today. So I hope you enjoy that, because I think these are really important and they're still as relevant today as they were back in 2011. There's really no difference in the experiencer experience. And I think these are still very vital testimonials. And I hope you find that too. And I'll be interested to hear your comments. And please do like, subscribe, and share. You know, it makes a difference. Interestingly, too, you will hear one of the first, I think, public testimonies from Simon Parkes, who I think in 2011 was just about a year into beginning to speak publicly about what his experiences were, and in the interim time has gained some notoriety, has gained quite a lot of following, and has also become something or somewhat of a celebrity in the States with his prognostications along the lines of, I guess, of Charlie Ward on what's going on in America and with the globalists, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and such like, which is an interesting transition. So anyway, you saw it first here. I thought that was just an interesting observation. And there also here are a brother and sister talking about experiences having generational events. Well, we know that Tracy and David certainly have, and they both speak. Now, nobody was going to speak at this meeting, so Simon Parkes, I have to say, kicked it off. So he spoke up first, giving everybody else the courage to do just that. So I have to thank Simon very much for that. We have lost Brian, who you will hear speak, an absolutely lovely gentleman. He is no longer with us, as it seems to be the case for quite a few people these days. I don't know about you guys, but I've lost a few people to the other dimension, and it's a strange old thing, isn't it, these times? But all interesting in this reorientation and recalibrating as well. So meanwhile, the ET Newsroom has taken over the Ammach Project after the Ammach Project was hacked to Hades back at the end of 2015. So 2016, I had to come up with a new name, and it was the ET Newsroom. Don't ask me why, it's stuck. Anyway, so I hope that you will enjoy this very first foray into the world, the public domain of the Ammach Project. We actually had this 13th of May meeting. The date wasn't contrived either, it's just what worked out. And we ended up being in the Masonic Hall in Nottingham, one of their rooms that they hire out. And it just happened to be the most cost-effective and comfortable place with the best deal for teas and coffees. So no subterfuge there, but isn't that interesting? So I always say we were bringing light to an area where maybe it needed it. So enough of me. I hope you enjoy this very first Ammach Project episode showing the very first foray of the Ammach Project into the world. Enjoy. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I know you've come from various places. This is a really special event. And also, Ammach is fundamentally a support network as well. It's not often that you folks get a chance to meet each other. We've got a lot to say, and I think us connecting with our higher selves, whatever you want to call that higher energetic field, is very powerful indeed. And, there's a reason that we're all here today together. So, again, thank you for coming. And I'd just like to hand over to Dave Griffin from extrapolitics.org.uk.
I'm pleased to see that the UK and the Midlands have got something actually going on the contactee area. I've been sort of doing the UK ex-politics thing since 2005, put on conferences, various other things, had a website going, spoken in Europe and other places about the ex-politics thing, which is a slightly different thing to the whole UFO thing, but still incorporates the contactee phenomena, puts it in a more of a wider context and a societal context and a political context. One of my main interests, apart from file release and all the other stuff to do with the politics side of things and disclosure, I've actually always been driven by the contactee phenomena. That for me is where things are at. We're trying to educate people with, and the media, with to do with things like file releases by government and stuff, and that tends to draw people in, and then on top of that you'll find that they gradually get more interested and will start to look at things like the contactee phenomena. And from my point of view, once you've read a few contactee accounts that you find authentic and you find that there's some actually really crucial and really interesting information that you won't find in any other walk of life. You try and find the sort of data you get from contactee accounts anywhere else, it isn't there, and I find it fascinating. So really the only other thing I wanted to say is that we're on our third conference at Leeds, for Leeds Ex-Politics Conference, held at Leeds University this August. The last two did quite well. This one I think is going to do even better on numbers and attraction and media interest wise, but more importantly for this context today is that the whole of Sunday is dedicated towards the contactee issue. All I got to say on that.
Thanks, David, for that.
My name's David Hodrin. I run the Birmingham UFO group. The group's been running since late 2007, and I wasn't the initial chairman of the group. I was taken on as the official investigator. Took on the running of the group in summer 2009, and have been investigating cases ever since. Especially interested in the contact side of things. I think the contactees are on absolute forefront of the subject, because other people having direct interaction, many of you, having direct interaction with the beings piloting these craft, which I think is one level up from just looking at the actual craft themselves. I work specifically with Rob Tudge at the back there. Rob's a hypnotherapist who helps us out with contact cases off his own back, which is great. We regress contactees, and that forms part of the investigations. All the cases I've looked into, I write a detailed confidential report on, which gets posted on our website, which is bufog.com, bufog.com. I deal with cases both from around the UK and abroad, just basically whatever comes the way of the group. I work with Richard Hall, who may have been to his website, richplanet.net. He sends the cases he gets through the website to myself, and I go out and investigate those and write the reports. Birmingham UFO Group Contactee Support. It's a monthly online meeting which I've set up. It's great, absolutely, what you guys have done here with us meeting up, but the online meeting I put together so that there wouldn't be any pressure, there wouldn't be any travel involved, and also people can come into it from anywhere in the world. And that takes place once a month, usually the last Sunday of the month, and it's a couple of hours long, and it just gives people a chance to talk. Great to be here today.
Again, a little bit similar to Dave's chat room, setting up a conference call for people to whenever we do that. And can I just ask people, just bring this to people's attention? It's just permission to use material. In my media work, I've done a bit of extra work and stuff like that, and I always had to sign. It's called a release, and it just allows us to use the material, so we don't have any comeback from you guys at any time, because we're being absolutely upfront about what we want to do with this material. We want to put it out in the public domain, and it'll be your stories. It'll be us putting it together in your stories. But if you are not happy about that, there is just a little bit that says that you can opt out. So the thing is that we're honouring all of that, but you just have to inform us. We just do need to have the permission to use material. Otherwise, we can, don't want to really fictionalise it. It would be a shame when there's, anchoring it with the real NG of you, because that's what's going to get this out there.
Generally, in this way, are people going to come up and discuss things, or just?
Well, I think we'll do. We'll have people comfortable where they are, and we've got a mic there, and we can hand the mic, and we can film that. That's fine.
Hi, hello. My name is Simon. I'm 51 years of age, and I've been around these creatures for 51 years of my life. Rather, these creatures have been around me. I didn't go seeking them. They came to find me. I don't know whether it's something that's run in the family. My mother used to work for MI5, and she worked on documents that dealt with craft that had been downed. Whether she had any contact or not, I really don't know. I've had two memories that have always been with me. One was in 1971, when I was 11 and a half years old, and I call that the day that changed my life. The memory that I'd always had, I can remember the UFO, and I can be remembered going up into the ship, but it was only the last 8 to 9 months that I've got my memories back, and I haven't had regression. I haven't got them back through dreams. It literally comes back through something I'll do at home. If I look out the window and see something, or I'll hear something and it'll spark it, and I'll go down and I'll write down and draw down very quickly what I've remembered. I've always considered up to November 2010 that I was an abductee. End of November, I got a memory back where I actually made a bargain with them. I actually made an agreement. So from that moment onwards, don't consider myself an abductee, I consider myself a contactee. And one of the other memories I had, I was 3.5 years old, and a creature which I've always called my smoke man, and understand is actually called a shadow being, just literally walks right through the wall. Not a very nice thing to do to a 3.5-year-old. But since then, I've had something like 500 separate memories that have come back. And I've left my memory book at home, where I've documented all my memories and my drawings. So it's something that I've learned to live with. I've come through the very dark tunnel when you suddenly realise that something's going to come and get you. I don't know if anybody's read any books of Whitley Schreiber. In the book, Schreiber talks about how he looks through wardrobes and he opens drawers, he looks under the bed. Now, I never had that, but during the time that I became self-aware, I was literally going and locking the front door 5 or 6 times, but I didn't know why I was doing it. Or if I want to go to the loo at night, I used to run from the bed to the loo and run back again because something was going to get me. But I didn't know what it was. But because the memories I've had have been largely positive, because I haven't been badly treated by them, I'm in a position where I feel that I'm able to talk and I can be quite strong about it. I have met people who do not have such interesting and pleasant memories, and for them it's much harder to speak. If you go to the bookshelves, and you buy a UFO book, everyone's an ambassador, aren't they, or this, that and the other, and you think, well, it's brilliant. But there are an awful lot of people who don't have good experiences, and they're not going to write books about it.
Can I just ask the type of beings you had interaction with?
It was Dave Hodrin who actually told me the name for the creatures. I described them to him. In England, they're called mantid. In America, they're called mantis, and I see all 3 sorts of mantid: the doctors, the pilots, and the masters with the purple cloaks. Tall greys. The little greys, the 2 sorts of little grey, the original race of little grey, and then the little grey that's half biological and half computer. Reptilians, mostly the soldier types. They're the ones with the blacky green skin. Some crystal beings at very high density, high resolution. A whole range of creatures, but it is the mantids that come and get me. It's the mantids that hold my hand. It's the mantids that will sit and have conversations with me. When I first started my memories back, I would just get snippets of memory and snippets of conversation, but now I can recount whole sections of conversation, and it's very clear now what I'm supposed to do. I think everybody who's an abductee or a contactee thinks, well, why me? Well, what is it about? And some people never get the answer. I'm very fortunate they've made it clear to me what it's about. So because I've not been abused, I should think most people have been on the operating table, but that's not gratuitous violence. That's them just doing what they need to do. That's not designed to hurt me. But I haven't been hurt outside of that.
Have they communicated at all about this testing?
What they've told me, first of all, they're looking for pollutants in my body to see how I've been affected by the changes in the atmosphere. Also, if there are diseases, they'll cure them, because they've told me that they're going to keep my body healthy. And I'm sure others will talk about it. It's all about the genetics. It's all about the DNA. That's what they're really interested in.
So are they interested in that as for the betterment of humanity? Are they creating another race?
I can only tell you the faction of extraterrestrials that deals with me. I know for a fact from what they've said there are different groups all signed up to different factions, and each faction will have its own way of doing it, but they've all signed up to the same agenda. I've had it explained to me in terms of, I don't like the word hybrid because it's a nasty, dirty word for a wonderful piece of life.
Is that in essence then their agenda?
My own take on it is that is absolutely the agenda.
The agenda for the bettering of the human form.
No.
Am I right on that? No?
No, right. This is not your Earth. This is not your Earth. It never was, and it never will be. These bodies that we have here, these are not through a process of evolution, Charles Darwin and his beagle and the rest of it. Extraterrestrials can't survive in this dimension for very long, because we're a low dimension, third, 3.3, we've got time as well, I suppose. But a hybrid body, which is part from the Earth, an extraterrestrial body, can survive. And it's about the souls. It's about what you put into those bodies. Extraterrestrials want to learn to experience again. They have very little feelings. Not all of them. Some of them have feelings of sensations, but most don't have very well developed, have lost them. So if they can come to Earth, they can survive on Earth in what you call a hybrid body, but there won't be an invasion. The spaceships aren't going to land. The human race has got to evolve, develop, and move on. And I know this might go on YouTube, so I'll actually make a plea to all what I call the shepherds. Those are the people out there whose job will be to help humankind evolve, get them off the planet, get them off, move them off quickly, because you're holding up the agenda.
Well, that was a dramatic note to finish on. Yes, would you mind?
Hello, I'm Scott. I've been experiencing really since I was a child. One of my first memories, it was an orb of colour above my cot. The colours just swelled and mingled into each other. I can remember crying out for my parents and no one came, and to be quite honest, I don't remember much after that until a regression. I always wrote that off as a dream, but I had other experiences in between that dream and what I was told was called my primary recall experience, and that's really what I will talk about. It was Christmas 2008, and I'd been waiting all Christmas for something to come onto the television, and I knew it was starting at 8 o'clock. I had a terrible chest infection to the point where I was unable to work, and when I was working, anything that exerted me at all, I was being sick. It was horrible. But I suffer with a chest infection yearly. 8 o'clock come, the thing started that I wanted to watch on television, and I've just stood up, grabbed the dog's lead, popped the dog's lead on, and I've taken the dog for a walk. But it sounds strange, but the walk that I took was not a walk that I would usually take. It was completely out of the way. I'd usually just walk around the park and up to some yellow bollards and walk back. But by the time there's a small pond at the park, I reached the pond, and instead of staying on the footpath, I ended up walking round. It's pitch black and it was icy. And then instead of joining the path again at the other side of the pond, I've just continued walking out towards the fields. And that is a walk I'd never take. I mean, maybe on a summer's day, a hot summer's day. But it was freezing cold, pitch black. There's no artificial lights. There was nothing to help us on my way. When I reached the fields, at the top of the allotments, it was like, the only way I can explain it is like someone literally flicked a switch in the field, and there was a light rolling, a white light. And I don't know why I thought it. I don't think I did think it. I think it was implanted. It was lampers hunting for rabbits, and I had to go into the field and talk to the hunters. So I've walked into the field and I've got about halfway down. I thought, this just isn't right. There was a fear that overcame me. It was incredible. I've never felt fear like it. My dog actually rooted to the spot. We turned and we legged it up to the top of the field where I'd entered, and I felt much comfortable from up there. So I looked down, and in the tree by the side of the railway embankment was an orange orb, and it was just literally sat there. There was a bit of a fog, and the other side of the field there was it's a country road. Where it was a slight bit of fog, you could see the cars that was coming through from the hedgerow, where the light would reflect off of the fog. And as a car would come along, the orange orb would lift up, move over towards where the car was, and follow it over to the as the car would go over the bridge at the railway. It'd follow it, see it over there, and then it'd come back and it'd sit in the same spot. And I thought it was marvellous. Next thing, a white bar appeared from off of the embankment. And it's hard to say how big it was because of the distance that I was, and it's nothing that you can it's not the usual sort of thing that you'd see, so you can't sort of like judge the size of it. But I had a red light on either end of this white bar, and it flew up the field, which is about 600 metres long, and done a turn which is physically impossible, and then made its way back down to the end. At that point, I realised I've got to get my family. I've got to show my family this. So I ran home. Now, like I said, I had a chest infection, and I was being physically sick every time that I exerted myself. But I got back to my house in about 2-3 minutes. Totally impossible. No chest infection. The chest infection had gone. I grabbed my kids. I didn't even give them a chance to put their shoes on. In the van, so I threw them in the van. We drove back. My wife didn't want to come. We drove back out to the field, and as close as we could get, took them out. We didn't really see much. I mean, we were just literally staring at the fog. The fog was thickening up. So I said, why don't we go round to the road where I saw the orb and see if we can get the orb to come over. So we drove out there, gone over the bridge, and I'm flashing me lights. Nothing came over. So went back and parked up over by the barn. And out to the right-hand side, there was a red light in the field, and this is the field on the other side of the road. I thought at the time, this must be a Christmas light or something from a farmhouse. So until my son saw it split into two, and then rejoin. And while we sat there, I didn't see that, but my son did. We were all looking in different directions. It was so strange. There was nothing in the sky. Then all of a sudden, it was like a segment, like a portion of a craft that would illuminate, but that illumination would revolve around the entire craft, so you'd be able to get to see what the craft looked like, the shape of the craft, but not in its entirety. You'd just see a section of it illuminate and revolve around. And I saw this 3 times. Each time the light had finished revolving round, it looked like underneath, if I can describe, a couple of circles with segments coming off the circles, and it just left that like an element, like you'd see with a light bulb as it slowly dimmed, and that's all that I was allowed to see. But you had to look to the side of it to see that. We see this 3 times, and each time it moved further over to the right. Anyway, one of my eldest son, he got a little bit frightened and wanted to go home, so I drove him back. Then me and my other 2 kids, we walked back out to the field with the dog. As we were walking out there, one of my sons says he sees legs off on the embankment. There's someone in the bushes, Dad. I was too scared to look. I'll admit, I was a bit of a coward, too scared to look. But we stood there, and we stood in this field for, I'd say it was about an hour, looking at nothing, and the fog was thickening. There was nothing there. Why we were stood there, looking at nothing, not communicating, not talking, I don't know. Youngest son then gets scared, so we take him home. This is where it gets strange. Me and my middle son, do you want to go out there again, son? Yep. So we dive back in the van and we drive out to the barn. The fog by this time is so thick. We're there 5 minutes, gone a maximum of 20 minutes. Come home. When we had left, my wife and my eldest son were watching Mamma Mia. That was a Christmas present that we bought her. And by the time we got back, my youngest son was in bed, wife was in bed, and my son was halfway through a comedy special. We didn't put 2 and 2 together at the time. I then reported this as a sighting, got in touch with Dave Hodrian, and Dave came over, and Dave was in the house when we actually found out exactly what it was that had happened. My wife was able to explain, and my son was able to explain, that we hadn't been gone for 20 minutes, and we hadn't taken the van. We had walked with the dog, and we'd been gone for over 2 hours.
Sometimes it really is an overwhelming experience.
After we found this out, the next few months was hell. It was absolute torture. Trying to assimilate this now into my reality was impossible. My mind took a hammering, and the experiences didn't stop. Nothing negative. There's no negativity whatsoever. The only negativity I found was from the reaction from friends, supposed to be best friends. I lost my business through trying to deal with this. Nearly lost my wife. It was just torture, to be quite honest with you. Believe it or not, I am coping now. But it's been hard. I agree with what Simon says. There is a soul level to this, and this is a thing that I think a lot of people have become completely detached from, is the fact that we aren't just physical beings. Something inside every single one of us. And I was shown myself, shall we say, introduced to myself. Thank you. Cheers. And it's been great getting to know myself through it. The experiences do continue, and well, what happened with me afterwards was what's known as a sleep abduction, a sleep experience. I don't want to go into detail on that. What I would like to say, because this is other people are going to get to see it, and a lot of debunkers, namely R.J. McNally, has classed it as hypnopompic hallucinations. But I was returned with bruises, which I didn't do myself. If I'm paralysed, how can I bruise and mark and scratch myself? It's impossible. There's so many different levels to abduction. Whether it's just class, whether a person just wants to say it's abduction, or they want to call themselves a contactee, whatever. It's just a different label, and I think we've got to drop the labels. There's too many labels, and there's too many different labels, and that creates division. And let's just look at religion just to see what happens with that. And too much death, too much war. Forget the labels. It's all the same thing. So that's it. I mean, I've got more to say, but I'll pass it over. Thank you.
My name is Brian. I come from the southeast. My first experience of anything that didn't seem to fit the normal way of life was, I imagine I was about 3 or 4. I don't know, because I know I was very young. It was one of my very first experiences and thoughts. And I can remember, we used to live in the East End of London in those days, and we had an outside toilet, and we had, instead of a kitchen, we had what was called a scullery. And out in the scullery, Mum had this like a mangle, so I'd turn the handle and whatever, and it was all folded up and made safe so I couldn't squash my fingers in it. But I used to play with this mangle at the age of 3 or 4, and I was driving a spaceship. I was flying a spaceship. Now, at that time, I wasn't even aware of televisions, and we didn't get a television until I was about 9, because I'm going back when I was 3. I was born in 48, so there was no contact that I would have had with anything like that. But why I had that memory that it was a spaceship, it didn't even enter my mind that it was a car, because we didn't know what cars were in those days. No one had a car around our place, in those days. So that was one of my earliest memories. Later on, when I was in my teens, I was laying in bed, and I know you can dream that you're awake, but I know that I was awake. I was definitely awake. And I just
had this, like Scott was saying, I had this terrible fear. It was an immense fear, and I knew that there was an entity behind me. But to be where it was, because my headboard was up against the outside wall of the house, whatever was standing behind me would have been partly embedded in that wall and part standing outside the upstairs outside of the house. Tremendous fear. I was rigid. I couldn't do anything. I was immobile. Then after a few minutes, everything went serene and calm, and I knew that it was okay. Everything was okay. I felt quite at ease with everything, so much so that I knew I didn't even have to turn around to see if it was safe. I knew I was safe, and I didn't need to look. And I just laid there, and I eventually went off to sleep. Around about that same time, probably within that, it's a long time ago now, but it was probably within those same, within a couple of days of that experience. I remember standing, just leaning on my windowsill, looking out my window across the green. By this time it wasn't in the East End of London, when I say green, by the way. I was looking out across the green, and I was aware of a UFO, and it was, I suppose it must have been about 50 metres off the ground, quite big, and I just had this thought of it just leaving, as if I'd been returned. I wasn't aware of what had happened to me, but I just had this feeling that I'd been somewhere.
Before you continue, I wanted to ask you what type of craft that was that you saw.
Circular. Mm-hmm. It was like a deep at the bottom, round, and it was like a dome on top.
Yeah.
Like a crash helmet.
Crash helmet would be too roundy. That'd be too. Didn't seem as high as that.
Dome disc, yeah.
It seemed like a lot of it was. It's almost like the bottom part that was circular around. It's more like the dustbin lid shape.
Yeah.
A high dome.
It's more like the Adamski craft, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of. Or the Moonville.
And there seemed lots of colours with it.
So is this 1951?
No, this was later on when I was a teenager. Sorry, yeah, that
colours, what, emanating from it, or or from definite light sources on it?
Light sources on it.
Right.
Yeah, there was, not. It wasn't projecting the colours other than it was the colours seemed part of it. I've got an image, and if I was a good artist, I might be able to draw something, but to describe it, a bit awkward. It's a bit awkward.
Do you want to draw?
I'm not
we've
very
got a
good
flip
artist.
chart if anybody
I
just
draw
want
for a
to
living,
scribble.
but not artistically. Someone that was living with me at the time, like myself, used to go, still do, go to a spiritualist church. Part of what I do there is regression and transfiguration. In the transfiguration, I was standing in my kitchen, and a friend who was living with me at the time said, why don't we do a bit of transfiguration? We wasn't doing this from any UFO or any other reason than to do with what we sometimes do at the spiritualist place where we go. We did a short meditation, and she was standing about 4 foot away from me, looking at me, and I felt that I was standing next to her, looking back at myself, and it was a weird sensation because I was outside of myself looking at me. It's like my face, again, it's something that Scott said about what you saw about a craft, where you only saw part of it. My face, I don't know if it was like a reptilian, but it was like a scaly and red and quite big and roundish. Scales, not like fish scales, but it's almost like different Imagine if you got lumps of red coal, put them everywhere. It looked a bit more like that in that sort of configuration. Parts of my face was only visible. It's almost as if everything, the time synchronization was all out. I could see my eye, but I couldn't see the rest of my face, and I see a bit of my mouth and that. But it's happening so quick that you could see the whole outline of my face. And the remarkable thing was, my friend described this to me. She described what she was seeing, and it was exactly the same, and I mean exactly the same as what I was seeing. I could never prove to her, of course, that, you know, what she was saying, I saw the same. I couldn't prove to anyone, but she proved to me that what she saw, I don't doubt for one instant that what she saw was very real, and it was exactly the same as what I saw. And I felt that I felt that I belonged to something else. Part of me there's another dimension that wasn't with Brian, it was belonging somewhere else. Yeah, I felt that's what we were seeing.
That does actually fit in with some of the cases that I've investigated where people have seen themselves, sometimes under aggression, sometimes not. They've actually seen themselves as a grey or as a reptilian. Whether you're seeing aspects of yourself through that, and it's showing in that visual form. It's hard to say, really. Yeah, and sorry, when I said I do regression, I don't. I meant to say transfiguration. I was a bit nervous, and I didn't correct myself then. I wanted to keep with the flow. So I've never been regressed, and I've never done it. I've always felt that I've been getting all through my later life, probably the second half of my life, I felt that I've been getting information, and I've been feeling it here, as if I've been getting something fed to me. I don't know the details of that information, but I'm aware when I'm getting it. It's, you know, it's almost like, here they go again, they're giving me something, and I feel that's for something later on, that something other than Brian, part of me, is getting fed.
Is that like a sensation, like a specific sensation that you get used to, and you just know something's being downloaded?
It can be for a couple of hours sometimes, Yes, at any particular time. I'm just aware that they're giving me information. It's not for Brian, it's for another dimension of me, if you like. Yeah. That's what I'm feeling. I'm a spiritual healer, and also link in with a being that comes from a long, long way away, and that is... It's like a light greeny colour, very physically very delicate. I've seen him. I say him. I don't think it's got a gender, but it almost looks like it comes through with the healing. Yeah, when it normally gives that. If someone was a harsh person, he wouldn't be able to come through, because there's such a delicate, emotionally, or his energies are very delicate, even though as a being, he can be powerful in his own way. I say he, it's not he or a she, but I'm just using it as a description. It looks more like head looks a little bit like a locust. It's a very unusual looking, praying mantis type looking head, but almost like with fins, not where you might be rounded. It's almost like it comes out into sort of like fins a bit. I've seen lots of flying objects, UFOs. I've seen one where I went round to my friends with my wife, and as we was going in, someone pointed up to the sky and said, "Look at that," and we thought it was a satellite. I know there's hundreds up there, and we just thought we was watching the satellite, and all of a sudden, as it was going round, it went off at 90 degrees for a short distance and then stopped. And we watched it for about 5 minutes, and it didn't move any more than that. So then we went in. Another time I've been walking along, and we see this object in the sky. It just seemed to be going the speed of it must have been going about 10 miles an hour. It was so slow, I couldn't believe that something could stay up in the air with the speed it was going. And for some reason or other, I don't know, it's like where it would have been fascinating to watch it. It's almost as if I was compelled not to. It was as if we just went away and left it. And to this day, I can't understand why we didn't say, let's get the camera, let's take a shot, let's study.
Can we have just a look? Simon's drawn as a little depiction, and I don't know whether that has any...
It was when you said like a locust.
Sense for your
Yes, there is elements there, yes. But there was also, along the sides of his head, there was almost like fins.
Bumps.
like ridges?
No, almost like a...
Oh, like a little fin?
Yeah, like a little fin, yeah,
Oh,
like each side.
Like
yeah.
antenna.
No, just like as if it's... Imagine a fin going, if you stuck like a half a leaf along each side of his head. It looked like that.
Do you remember the skin tone, the colour? Or?
Yeah, it was light green.
Oh, that was the light
green, yeah.
That's wonderful, thank you
Yep.
very much. And just with time constraints, we're just going to move on. No, brilliant, thank you very much.
Right, my name's Tracy, I'm 24 from Birmingham. Pretty much all my life, as far as I can remember, I've had paranormal activity going on constantly. My nan's told me stories from when I was 3 that I'd used to tell her, and obviously when I heard about David's experiences with like ETs, I always thought that was kind of more his thing and the paranormal was more mine, and I never expected anything to happen to me, which is a bit naive really. This year, my first experience that I remember is I woke up a number of times in the middle of the night or early morning. I remember turning over because I sensed something was on the bed, and I saw a creature, turned over, went back to sleep instead of being like, oh my god, what the hell's that? I can't remember exactly what happened, but I know I woke up not long after that and just had the thought in my head of I've been abducted. The next thing that I seem to remember is something like a metal rod just gently touching my temple. And then I kind of woke up and carried on normally throughout the day, and I think it got to about the afternoon and I actually started to remember it and was thinking, oh my god, what on earth was that? And then I got a little bit freaked out by it, and that was the other thing that happened. One of the times that I woke up, I think it was before the metal rod, I woke up and I was facing the wrong way because I normally sleep on my left and not my right, and I was on my right. And I was a bit confused to why I was there. And my right leg that I was lying on was itching and throbbing. So I give it a bit of a scratch and went back to sleep. And when I actually checked my leg, I think it was that night or the day after, I had a bruise and like a little red dot, almost like an injection site, which I've actually still got. The red mark's still there, but the bruise faded very quickly. But yeah, it was a bit... It's very intriguing. I'm very kind of interested now in what on earth's going on, although I'm still absolutely petrified at the same time. And I think it was about a month ago, I had another experience. Well, I think I went to sleep and I woke up again in the night, and it was because I'd heard trickling water that was from by the bedroom door, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It wasn't from the bathroom, or just couldn't figure out what it was. And I got like quite an uneasy feeling, and I turned and looked around the room, and I looked by my partner, and what I could see was almost like the shape of a grey but wider, but it was like looking through a thin layer of water. And then there was another one that was down by his knees. It looked like it was bent over, which was really strange. And I remember I was gripping onto my bed going, you're not going to get me, you're not going to take me. The next thing I remember is I turned over and the uneasy feeling went, and I managed to go back to sleep. And I remember waking up again later. I think I'd been asleep, or either that or I was dozing, but I could hear like a beeping noise, like a irregular beeping noise, but it wasn't... I think the best way to describe it is like almost a translucent noise, like it was there but it wasn't, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It was just in the room, it weren't coming from anything in particular. It's just this beeping noise, and I remember listening, and every time I closed my eyes, it was beeping, but I opened my eyes and it stopped. And I remember listening to outside, and I could hear, that I've heard 2 or 3 times, it's like a cross between a plane and a car, but like a low humming level, and that went on from anywhere up to 10 minutes to half an hour. But I've had what I've classed as flashbacks from these 2 things that have happened. The first one that happened, I think it was a few days later, I had flashbacks of I was laid down and I was in, all I could see was like a white yellow light room, and there was a being that was kind of to the left of me, but it looked quite old. It was like a grey but really almost wrinkly. And the next flash of it was standing to the right side of me. It was looking straight at me and it had its mouth wide open. The other thing that I remember seeing is the one that was on my bed, walking from the bottom of the bed round to me. But it was a different one to the one with its mouth open. The other image that I've had from the second thing that happened was seeing at the end of the bed, just poking up over the bottom of the bars, a little grey head. Well, it's quite a big grey head, and it had like a line down the middle, like a slight dip down the middle, with big grey eyes. It did freak me out a little bit, but a few days after the beeping noise, I remember I was sat in my living room watching TV and playing on my laptop, and everybody had gone to bed. I heard the beeping noise again, and it was coming from the left of me, and I couldn't figure out again what it was from. And then I got a really, really uneasy feeling, and I gripped my phone really tightly, and I was just tried to carry on as normal, and eventually it just went away, and I went to bed and carried on.
Do you feel that on either or both of those experiences you were taken aboard a craft?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've also had, there's 2 nights in a row, and I've never ever had this before, is excruciatingly painful, well, not period pains, but only of a night time. Haven't suffered them throughout the day at all. There's just 2 nights in a row that it kept waking me up because I was in that much pain with it. Can't explain it. I've spoke to my doctor, and she says there's no medical explanation for it at all.
You remember asking your brother when he had his experience to you coming home, or what was it? What did she say to you?
She said to take him home.
No.
Could you not remember any of that?
No.
No, that's interesting.
Since I've had my experiences, I've actually remembered doing some drawings when I was younger. I've been to my parents' house and I've actually found them, and it's like a sequence of hybrids from greys to human, and I've done, well, it's a fair bit of detail, and I've wrote on the back the percentages of what I thought they were, and on the back of some of them I've drawn up the mouths. I don't know what it is about the mouths, they seem to want to show me the mouths.
I remember you drawing them.
Yeah, when we discussed those in detail, Tracy, it seems that you're in some way related with this hybrid breeding program, but you have no real recollection of where those drawings came from, have you?
No, I don't remember why
the reasoning
I did them
behind drawing them.
anything. No.
But
was the bruises on your leg the same area where you had been bitten?
Mine was right. It was right on the top of my leg.
And mine was like down here, near my ankle. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tracy, for sharing. That's really fantastic.
I'm David from Birmingham. I'll just introduce myself first. I wasn't going to say anything originally, but I thought, what the heck, I might as well, seeing as I'm here and everyone else has done their part. So I'm sort of quite new to it. I'm only 22, so it's sort of all starting to happen for me. So really, I've had 2 sort of main events really that I can recall, and just other weird things that have happened in between. The first thing that happened to me that I can recall was when I was about, I think, 7 or something like that. I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I remember just going to bed on a normal night. It was near the end of the year, so it was quite cold outside, and the next thing I know, I'm stood in the back garden. We had like a pile of slabs because there was some work going on at the bottom of the garden. I think my dad was doing some patio or something and just had some slabs down there. And I was just sort of leaning against these slabs, and I was just in my boxers. So I could feel the cold on me. It felt quite real. couldn't sort of look straight up above me, but like there was just like a white light that covered the whole garden. I just had the urge to look sort of down, and like on my left leg there was like some sort of painting on my leg. It looked like sort of like a flag or something. And then the next thing that I know, I'm in my bed, check my leg, like, and there's nothing there. And then like the next day, I think it was the next day or so, like I found something actually sticking out of my leg, sort of metallic sort of thing. My dad actually like pulled it out, just thought nothing of it and just chucked it in the bin. And then like 3 days later, the same thing come back in my leg in exactly the same place. And my dad's actually an electronics engineer. Well, he's retired now, but he looks at it and he says, yeah, it's some sort of metal, but I don't know what it is. Like, and we just chucked that away as well, because I didn't like really tell them like what the experiences were with it. So I didn't like want them to think I was mad or anything. More recently this year, I had another experience where I can actually remember a bit more. I didn't actually see any beings. I think they used like screen imaging. I went to bed again, as you do, and sort of it was like a dream, but it wasn't. It was like I was in a trance sort of thing. The next thing I know, I'm in like some sort of, it was like it was a flat or something, but some of the rooms inside it looked similar to the ones of the house where I live with my parents. There was someone like guiding me, like, well, people around me, if you can call them people, beings maybe, holding my onto my arm, sort of guiding me around. And there was lots of other beings in there moving about, but to me they looked like human beings, but I don't think they actually was. And they sort of showed me, like made me look into a room that was identical to my parents' bedroom, and I could actually see my parents in the bed in there. Maybe that was to make me feel safer or something, I don't know. And then the next thing I know, I was walking along a field, like a green field, with somebody on my left hand side just holding onto my arm, and I was walking along. I don't know what else happened there, but then the next thing I know, I'm back in this sort of flat in a room. There's loads of sort of people around me, and then my sister, this is my sister, Tracy, she was in the room. Well, she was in the room in front of me, and then she says, I've come to take you back now. And then the next thing I know, I'm in my bed, wide awake, sitting up. I hear like this loud sort of whooshing noise outside of the window, sort of going up, and I felt extremely tired and exhausted, like I had no sleep whatsoever. And I found it sort of hard to come to terms with, but I sort of knew what was going on. I just burst into tears because I couldn't handle it. Quite sort of traumatic for me. I was still crying, and I actually sort of stood up out of bed. I turned the light on. I could still hear this loud noise from outside that didn't sound like a plane or anything going past, because I know what that sounds like, and it certainly wasn't that. And just still hearing the sound while I'm physically, conscious and aware, just put things more sort of, real to me and really frightened me. And this was near the start of this year. I'm 22 years old, and I went into my parents' bedroom and got in bed with them, and I was trembling with fear that much. I was literally like holding on to my dad. Like, he's a really sceptical person. Yeah. She's like talking to a brick wall, so she doesn't take anything of this in. So she probably thought I was completely nuts. My dad sort of tried to acknowledge things, and because he's quite an open-minded person.
Yeah. Do you know why you felt so frightened and emotional? Because obviously the experience which you've just described.
I think it's because I could remember more of it, like, and it felt more real than.
Do you think you had more?
And now I'm older.
Remember, yeah.
Because I think it's because I'm older as well. I'm not as young as I was before. Yeah. I'm more aware too.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it really sort of shocked me into like, yeah, this is real and this is actually happening to me. Since then, I can't really say anything else that I can remember has happened to me. But that was at the start of this year when that happened. But I can say more recently, my mum, who is actually sceptical, came to me a couple of weeks ago, and she said, I had this really weird dream. She said I was completely naked walking down this dirt road, and this guy come up to me and said, I can help you or something, and put her in a car or something, a vehicle. And then she said the next thing she knows, she's in a room that's like white light all around her, and she's in the room, and I was in the room as well. And she said there was some sort of machine in the corner, and they wanted me to repair the machine or something, and then they would actually let us go. And like, as soon as my mum told me that, I thought, that sounds really familiar, but I can't actually recall any memory of that, like, for myself. But it's just strange that my mum told me that, you know.
Yeah.
Because she's not the kind of person at all. I'm sure my sister will confirm that for you. You know, she's just a closed-minded person. Like, she just accepts anything that's in front of her, like on the telly or something, you know.
I suppose that's what a lot of you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, of a lot of the general public. There's a lot of people who aren't sort of open enough to it, or haven't looked into it enough to kind of really realise the extent of which it's going on.
Bad trouble sleeping at night. I've took sleeping pills. I'm a student, so I have to be up for university, and I've missed quite a lot of time off because of lack of sleep. Yeah. And taking sleeping pills just wasn't a good idea. Not long ago I went to my girlfriend's, she lives down south, and I felt safe with her. So, you know, I actually got some decent night's sleep there. And then I come back home, 3 days, I had a decent night's sleep for about 3 days, and then back to the same thing again. Had to turn my light on, sit up thinking, you know, when's it going to happen next? Yeah. You know, so it's just like you're waiting for something to happen again.
Yeah, it's something that many candidates have to deal with. I'm sure many of you can relate to that.
First thing you think of when you wake up in the morning, and it's the last thing that's going through your mind as you're going to sleep. But personally, I can't wait for it to happen again. I mean, despite all the trauma and the mind trying to get used to it, I love it. I love them. And the feeling of love that you can receive back from them is fantastic. I know I've
heard that before as well, very strongly.
It's just like magnified. It's so intense. Sorry.
No, you would accept that. And you know, I know. So your brother and sister, and great to see you both here. But maybe we could have your point of view, Tracy.
Yeah, I must say, having Tracy that's had experience as well.
Yeah.
There's been someone else to talk to, you know. Yeah. So I don't feel alone in the situation.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? The isolation that is so crippling.
Yeah.
Okay, my name's Alana. I'm 46 and I live in Somerset. I'm a healer. I'm a herbalist, a Reiki master, and I do Hawaiian massage. And since probably about September last year, I felt really driven to kind of explore some of the more unusual experiences I've had in my life. I don't know why, just suddenly very driven to kind of understand and get to the bottom of it. And what's interesting is that I've had a few of my clients have come to me presenting with interesting experiences as well. Etheric implants that I've done some work on and kind of removed. And another client that I perceived I was just removing some energy, some kind of drawing out some kind of negative energy. But what he relayed to me was that he felt that he had some kind of entity inside him that I'd removed, which was kind of intriguing because I very often find that my clients reflect my own healing process. You know, they reflect it back to me, which kind of made me want to pursue this all the more, really. I don't have a lot of recall in terms of what's actually gone on, but I've had a lot of odd experiences over the years. I suppose the main experience I had that I have the most memory from happened in Egypt in November of 97. And the first experience was in the King's Chamber. I went with a kind of crazy healing group from Glastonbury. We went into the King's Chamber very early in the morning before it was open to the public. It was about 6-7 o'clock in the morning. I just remember walking into the King's Chamber, walking over to a very specific point at the side, putting my head against the wall, And the next thing I knew, I was just flying around the stars, really. I just felt that I was out in the cosmos, part of the cosmos. And it was the most awesome experience. There aren't words to describe, really, how it feels. It was just beautiful. And then the next thing I remember, physically, is I'm lying in the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is full of tourists, and I don't think they open it to the public till about 10 o'clock, so 2 hours have elapsed at some point.
How long did it feel when you were having this vision of finding the stars? Did it feel like you were gone?
Felt like moments.
Oh, right, okay, so it felt like you'd only been gone for a very short period, but in actual fact it seemed that a couple of hours had gone by, yeah?
And there I am, I'm lying in the sarcophagus. There's the couple that are running the course, one's at my feet, one's at my head doing their thing. And I just remember feeling just like I'd been sucked back into my body way too early. I was having a great time where I was. I really suddenly felt like I was just in this huge, dense, uncomfortable physical body, and I felt totally traumatized, and I cried for just basically for the rest of the day. As I remember feeling
because
really,
of having come back into your physical body,
and that sensation lasted a long time. I mean, that sense of loss, of almost homesickness, really stayed with me for months and months and months. I mean, I'd say best part of a year, really.
So it was like an instant out-of-body experience, because a lot of people have talked about astral projection and that, and it was like that happened, but just involuntarily, you just leaned against the wall and it went. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, and clearly my body was doing its own thing.
Yes.
Something was driving it, but I don't know what. I'm certainly not conscious of what. And I don't know what had gone on in those couple of hours. Experience was, I can't remember how many days later, but we were on a cruise part of the trip down the Nile, and we'd gone to visit the Temple of Hatshepsut. I don't remember very much. I remember sitting on the coach. I remember looking out the window and seeing a spot. There's like a big kind of open area in front of the temple, and I just remember seeing this spot and thinking, I need to go and stand on that spot. And there was a big group of Japanese tourists standing on it at the time. But anyway, I got off the coach and I just marched towards this spot. And this group they just sort of shuffled off to the side, really. And I got to the spot, and then something really odd happened. It was like something took over my body, I don't know what. But I started moving my arms around and turning around on the spot and speaking this strange language. I don't know, it was very guttural, very kind of lots of kind of it was really a really weird language. And I just remember looking out through my eyes and being aware that my body was doing all this really weird stuff and thinking, everyone's going to think I'm some kind of nut, and just looking around to see if anyone was like and nobody seemed to even see me. I remember looking at somebody and it was almost like he was looking straight through me. And then I looked up and I could just see this enormous, huge spacecraft, round, and it was right above me, and I was looking at it from underneath, and it had kind of lights around the outside and something kind of spinning in the middle. And then there were 3 orbs, like silver orbs about this size, that kind of came down, and they were kind of moving around me. And I just remember turning around looking at them, and again I'm looking around and I'm thinking, is anyone seeing this? And no one, I mean, clearly no one saw it except me. And then I just suddenly felt like a bolt of electricity shoot through me, and everything appeared very different, like the light looked different. The ship was gone, and I couldn't remember my name. I remember having to get my passport out and reading my name, put my passport away, and I forgot my name again, and so I literally had to kind of keep repeating it to myself. And then I thought, well, I better go and find the rest of the group. And it's only been about 10-15 minutes, I thought. But at that point, everyone's coming back. They've all seen the temple, they've done it, they've got the book, the T-shirt, and they're all heading off back to the coach. I don't know how long we were supposed to be there, but I'm sure it was more than 15 minutes. But I remember feeling really out of it for the rest of the day. Really.
So when this happened, were there other people in close proximity to you at that time? And do you think anybody captured you on camera or anything like that?
I don't think they even noticed me.
No.
No, I get the feeling they didn't see me, like they were looking through me.
Yeah,
almost.
It's interesting the link with Egypt, because I've heard that off a lot of different contactees have mentioned Egypt in various ways, and linking back with them, a lot of people believe that ancestrally that's that they met the Egyptians in the past. And
I remember when I got back from Egypt, a week or so after, there was a huge, in that particular spot, that Temple of Hatshepsut, there was some kind of altercation went down. Some tourists were killed, supposedly. But at the time, I remember thinking, there's more to that. And do you know what I mean? It kind of struck a chord with me, and I just thought, I'm sure there's more to that than we're hearing, you know. So those are the main experiences. But I also remember when I was reviewing this experience a number of years later, because I was having some kind of odd bruises appearing, and I suddenly remembered that I'd seen that exact same shit before when I was, I don't know how old I was, about 8, something like that, and it was just flying. I remember looking out the bedroom window, which is at the front of the house, and seeing it, and it was like literally as big as the street. It was huge. I remember, like, you know, that everything went dark, you know, because it was blocking out the light, and I saw it fly over the house, and I remember running to the back bedroom to catch it kind of coming over the house, and it wasn't there. It had disappeared. And I remember running downstairs saying, "Oh, I've just seen a spaceship," and it was, "Oh, very nice, dear," you know. And I was really angry because nobody believed me, you know, and I was convinced there'd be something in the papers about it because it was so real to me. Yeah. I remember checking the papers for weeks and there was nothing.
Do you think, would this have been in daylight hours or was it after dark?
It was daylight.
It's daylight.
All daylight, yeah.
So it's possible that only you saw it again, do you think? Yeah, they were appearing to you, and because other people would have been in the area if it was daylight, surely, and would have seen something that large.
Well, it was enormous. I can't believe nobody didn't see it, you know. But it wasn't seen.
Have your family had any interaction or any experiences?
I've not heard of any of my family talk about anything like that. I mean, when I was a few years earlier, when I was a student, I was a mature student, so I would have been in my late 30s at that point. I remember going through what I perceived at the time to be a series of psychic attacks. It was around Christmas time and I was studying for my exams, and I'd get up in the morning, and then I'd only been up for an hour or so, and I'd be compelled to go to bed. I mean, I'd literally have to crawl on my hands and knees to get into bed, get this paralysis and a crushing weight on my chest, and a visual of a kind of spinning checkerboard. And I remember I had a cat at the time, and the cat would go crazy. The cat would just like literally climb on me and sit on my chest, and I'd just kind of like pass out, really. And I had some quite crazy dream sequences as a result of some of those, which are a bit intense, a bit too much to go into right now. But that was a whole series of events that went on. And then the events that probably about 4 or 5 years ago that I was talking about, I kept having a whole load of bruises. I'd wake up and I'd have like tiny little round bruise, sort of less than a centimetre, perfectly circular, just on my abdomen, round about my belly button.
Right.
This would happen regularly, and I kept dismissing them, and I'd be trying to watch what I did all through the day to try and figure out, you know, is there something I'm doing that's causing these bruises? And then one morning I woke up and my arm was killing me. My left arm was absolutely killing me, and when I looked at it, it was like a faint bruise. It was like a bruise that was weeks old. It was kind of yellowy brown and just fading. But I hadn't had anything on. There was no bruise the day before. But it was the shape of a hand with like 3 really long fingers. Yeah, and that arm was really painful. At which point I thought, I can't dismiss these as me just being clumsy through the day. And I was really obsessed with Silbury Hill at the time. I very often. I remember one day, I decided I was going to go and spend the night in my car, in the car park at Silbury Hill. I'd done it a couple of times, and I talked myself out of it. I was driving home from work, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And I don't really know what I did, but the next thing I remember, it's about 9:30, and I'm literally in Devizes already, and the duvet's in the back of the car, and I'm driving to Silbury Hill, and and it's snowing. and you know, spending the night in the car. And I remember I quite like kind of walking around late at night. I quite like that. I've always liked that. And I set my alarm on my phone to wake me up about, I think I set it to wake me up about 2 o'clock, because I thought all the traffic would die down by then, and I'll go for a nice walk. I like being out in nature at night. You know, I love that. And I remember my alarm went off at 2, and I remember feeling dreadful. I just, every bone in my body hurt. And I looked at my abdomen and I had a little bruise. And I thought, well, I'll set my alarm clock for another hour, but I can't imagine I'm going to be in any fit state to walk in an hour. And then the alarm went off again in an hour's time, and I felt absolutely fine, and got up and went and had a wander around. And those experiences went on for a while. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then I went to see a healer, Chris Thomas, who did some work with me. Those experiences seemed to stop after I'd been to see Chris.
You know, you could set that up and run it each night. You never know what you might capture.
CCTV now, cameras now that are fairly inexpensive, and I think we were talking before. I was talking to somebody about the new CCTV footage that's come about from a lady being showing a abduction. She appears to melt into the bed, and then suddenly she's there again. Yeah, but that's going to be one of the sort of the major, going to be a main case, because it's pretty unusual. I think that everything's unusual. Yeah. What's normal?
I think it's good to try and capture video evidence, because that's the holy grail. That's what everybody's looking for. With a lot of the time, people in the general public are like, okay, show me the evidence. If these incidents are actually occurring for real and are actually physical, then in theory you should be able to capture on camera. Albeit sometimes they have tried this and the camera's been shut down and this sort of thing, which people will say is some people will say it would be an excuse, but that's the facts of the matter. They have tried this before.